Hello out there, my name is Laolua Konde and you are on to Inside Sources. And here is my take for today entitled, Let Us Praise Some Good Works. We have had instances to call to question several things that pertain to Nigeria's government and politics. But today, we want to commend a few good works that shouldn't be ignored as we go along pushing for a greater, bigger, and better Nigeria's future. And then perhaps a nudge here and there. Here we go. It's a good thing that Nigeria is now almost out of the unbelievable situation where we were importing fuel in a country that produces crude oil in abundance. The era of subsidy and its attendant gargantuan corruption seems to have gone, and we pray gone forever. So today in Nigeria, while we should work harder to improve affordability of PMS, we now have PMS price going down marginally, though it's still higher than what it was in May 2023. The Tinubu administration must get credit because it certainly got the knocks after subsidy was removed. And so fair is fair. Let us applaud the Tinubu government on this and ask that more should be done where possible to keep the pricing going down and also to be more aggressive regarding the alternative to PMS. Something else. One of the federal ministers doing notable work is Professor Ali Pate, the coordinating minister for health and social welfare. While the Tinubu administration has yet to follow up on the groundbreaking report left behind by the Buhari-Osinbajo presidency on the national health insurance reform in this country, Dr. Pate has been demonstrating concern for the welfare of the poor and vulnerable Nigerians. So, under his watch as minister, the President Tinubu, has approved that all cesarean operations in this country for pregnant women should be done free. That means government will pay. And then recently, the President has also authorized that the federal government will pay 80% of kidney dialysis for Nigerians who cannot afford to pay. This is interesting. Now, these initiatives aim to reduce the financial burden of families and ensure that life-saving treatments are accessible to everyone regardless of their income. Now, this is very notable because it shows compassion and we commend them. There's also significant work of reform that is going on in the Ministry of Education with the assumption of Dr. Tunji Alausa as the Minister for Education. And we expect important progress there, hopefully especially against the background of the national confusion that we all experienced previously in the former setup in that ministry. The new Minister for Education, Dr. Alausa, has shown significant promise already with his right tone, his right attitude, and an understanding of the core issues Nigerians are expectant. Something else that we should talk about regarding the minister is that this week, the Trade and Investment Minister, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, reported that there are important FDI promises and commitments to the tune of over 50 billion already to Nigeria. That is a bit of good news. But there is so much more to do to make this a reality. And so we are watching with great expectations. Let's move on to the issue of fighting drugs. The fight against counterfeit drugs and substandard food products is also a critical battle that is going on and that requires unwavering commitment and leadership. This is why we should applaud the commendable work of the current Director General of NAFDAC, Professor Mojisola Adeyeye, especially as seen in some news developments lately. Only last month, NAFDAC uncovered the sale of USAID-donated drugs in Lagos and Abia markets. The agency also identified counterfeit cancer drugs in circulation, Fesgo and Avastin, circulating in Nigeria, and they gave important warnings and public alerts against this. NAFDAC is uncovering substantial quantities of fake and unregistered drugs, including very dangerous substances. Equally, the agency sealed 1,125 stores, 62 factories, and 108 warehouses that have been linked to counterfeit drug, addressing the estimated almost 70% prevalence of fake medicine in our country. That is a big deal. So we see that under Professor Adeyeye, NAFDAC again is fighting the good fight, cracking down on illicit drug trafficking and the proliferation of fake pharmaceuticals in our country. Kudos. Now, we must also add our voice to the need to beef up security around NAFDAC operatives generally, and especially the DG, who is being threatened alongside other agency staff. Let us all stand with those who courageously serve the public interest, such as the hardworking people of NAFDAC and their DG. The successes of NAFDAC reminds us also of the advances in the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, NDLA, under retired General Buba Marwa. We cannot forget that since Marwa took the reins at NDLA, the agency works back to life like never before, and the general has kept the momentum going. So far, so much. Kudos. Finally, there are such ministers like the Attorney General of the Federation and the FCT minister who have won open praise for some of their brilliant output. But we need to nudge them to do a little more. For instance, we need to nudge Prince Lateef Fagbemi SAN to ensure that the local government financial autonomy ordered by the Supreme Court comes into effect. It is being delayed. We need to also nudge Barrister Nyesom Wike to pay attention to human capital development issues and social services in the FCT, just like he has done for physical infrastructure. We need impact in those sectors also. And one more thing. Let us celebrate Professor Yemi Oshibajo, SAN, who, as President Tinubu described yesterday in his birthday greetings, and I quote, remains my friend and associate. He served our country meritoriously as vice president to that patriotic leader, President Muhammadu Buhari, unquote. What more can I say? Happy 68th birthday, my dear Prof. You exist to inspire. And there you have it. Inside Sources will be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Today we are leading with a conversation about some of the drama that is going on in the National Assembly, specifically the Senate. This past week, the Senate actually suspended one of its members, that is Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. And we remember that she had made an allegation about sexual harassment just before the suspension. And so we want to discuss what exactly is going on, what are the implications of the activities of the things that we've seen this week, and then what are the legal dimensions to it. To join me in that important conversation, I have two important guests. All the way from New York, I have Professor Mujuba Olufunke Okome, who is a professor of political science and African and Women's Studies from the Brooklyn College of the City University of New York. Prof, you are welcome to Inside Sources.
Thank you.
All right. And here in the studio, I have a returning guest, Mr. Ibrahim Usman Wali, who is a legal practitioner in Abuja. Mr. Wali, welcome back to Inside Sources.
Thank you. Thank you, Laul.
All right. So let's start with Professor Olufunke Okome. Now, if you are to describe what it is that has happened in the Senate in these past few days, where you have the suspension of Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan after she had made an allegation of sexual harassment. How will you describe what is going on, and what do you think? What's your take, Prof?
Well, I think it's patriarchy on steroids because, you know, the allegation of sexual harassment is a very serious one, and it should have been properly investigated by the Senate. Why is it patriarchy on steroids? The Senate has only, I think, 4 women out of hundreds, 160 or so, of Nigerians representing us. And the allegation, you know, when I say it's patriarchy is a system where there's male dominance validated as the normative frame from which society operates. So women are supposed to be silent. Women are supposed to accommodate and be, accepting of overtures from men, even when those overtures are inappropriate. A woman who speaks up is then chastised, infantilized, and unsupported, even by fellow women. So this is showing that as Nigeria, we are not progressive, that we are not in sync with the times, that, you know, Rwanda, that small country, has 60-something% women in its national legislature. What is wrong with us? So we are carrying last. We're proud of carrying last. We're a giant that has no feet, and we are not embarrassed. This is what is going on, so that I don't take up too much time.
Okay, I'm still going to stay with you because I wanted to follow up on that. So what do you consider to be the most significant thing that happened in what we have seen? Now, we have seen that before now, Senator Natasha Akpoti, it was said, they reassigned her sitting as position. And then she was accused of not complying. And so they also said that when she brought a petition, that she did not do it properly. So they are saying that, look, she's flouting the rules of the Senate. She's not doing things properly. You know, and I think there is a place for that. But on the other hand, she is also making an allegation, which in my view also is a very serious allegation. Now, how do you think this should have been handled in a way that people will feel that there is a sense of fairness and justice? Because in my view, we haven't seen that. Prof.
Yeah, so the sitting issue is a very serious one too, because it is important that in a free and fair democracy, people should be allowed to object to situations that don't favor them. And Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan, she stated her concerns, and that should have been taken seriously. Instead, in the classical way that Nigerian men tend to respond, and I'm saying Nigerian men because I'm kind of generalizing. I know they are good and feminist men and men who support women. But in the main, Nigerian men tend to see women as less than men, as not as capable as men, as people who should be silent, and as people who should take any kind of abuse, discrimination, put downs without responding. Some women also believe that this is how to go, because we are all in a patriarchal system. And this patriarchy influences people to behave in the way they do. It gives incentives to women who support the patriarchy so that they are the ones who advance faster in that system. And that's why many of the women who support this kind of bad behavior do so. It gives kudos to men when they behave badly. If a woman behaves that way, she will be chastised. She will be, even sometimes ostracized and cast out of a position that legitimately belongs to her. So that was terrible. And it is also, more terrible that there are there are allegations of sexual harassment, and the Senate president should have recused himself. He did not. Proper investigations should have been carried out. What they did in the Senate was a sham investigation. And as I said, Nigeria should be embarrassed. And I think the Senate as an institution needs to rescue itself and show that it understands what democracy is about. And democracy requires that males and females in that body must be treated in an equal way, that there should be respect for all members, that nobody should be talked about as though they are some, second-class citizen in that institution. And a lot of the aspersions that are cast against women, for me, as somebody who is Nigerian, who lives in the United States, and I teach international politics. I teach African gender politics. It is embarrassing, and it is the men in the Senate act as though we are in the 19th century. And a lot of the statements that men make in that body, I think they need to reflect, get a bit more education, get up to date with what the international norms are. Go back and read the Constitution, and then come back and act as mature, responsible, thoughtful representatives of all Nigerians. Because what they are doing so far does not reflect that.
Excellent. Thank you, Prof. We are coming back to you now. Let's bring it to the studio here, where we have Mr. Wali. And I like to have your take, but I also wanted to ask that under the 1999 Constitution, does the Senate, as an institution, do they really have the powers to suspend an elected senator from doing his or her work?
Thank you for this question. I see that you try to limit it to the 1999 Constitution, which is fine, but I have to say at the onset that by the totality of our laws, and not just the Constitution, including judicial pronouncements, and obviously specifically the Constitution, the Senate or the House of Representatives or the respective houses in the states do not have the power whatsoever to suspend an elected senator or an elected member generally. They don't have the power whatsoever. So let me begin by quoting Section 4, subsection 8, because it forms the foundation upon which every other argument is going to be built. Section 4, subsection 8, Section 4 generally provides for the legislative powers and, saying that legislators have the powers to make law and then, to oversee the other parts of government as well, yes. But subsection 8 says that in the exercise of that power, they are subject to the court. That is, they are subject to the court's supervision as well. Right. And they cannot make any law that ousts or seeks to oust the jurisdiction of the court. That is very, very important, right? Now let's go to Section 60, which provides for these Senate standing orders. The Senate standing orders is constitutionally rooted. But it begins by saying that subject to the Constitution, or rather subject to the provisions of the Constitution, you may make standing orders for your internal affairs. Right? So these two provisions are very important as anchors to what comes next. Now, if we go to Section 67, it provides for how a senator can vacate his seat legally, or how a House of Representatives can vacate his seat legally. Absence for more than 1/3 of the entire tenure. Maybe if you switch political parties, if you are no more a Nigerian, if you're part of a group that is not recognized by law, right? So all of these things are provided in the Constitution that, you would need to vacate the seat. Section 69 now goes on to provide recall proceedings that, people who actually elected you have the possibility, have the power rather, to recall you back. Now, in legal parlance generally, right, where a law provides for a group of things in a particular class or in a particular genus, and it provides for them specifically, then every other thing that is excluded is deemed absolutely excluded. So if it provides for vacancy, cessation of tenure in the office, it provides for recall, and it is silent on suspension, it means that there is no suspension, and the House cannot suspend you, without a doubt. But let me take you to judicial decisions. There was a particular case. Important. Yes, and I will reference this case because of there's some sort of similarity with the current case. Honorable Dana Rifkatu versus Speaker of Bauchi said in 2017, the Court of Appeal gave the decision. She was the only female in the House, by the way. It's very important.
In Bauchi State.
In Bauchi State at the time. She challenged the moving of the capital of the Tafawa Balewa local government to Bogoro. She's from Bogoro to Bonono. She challenged it, and they suspended her. So she went to court. She got judgment at the Federal Court, and she went to the They went to the Court of Appeal, and the Court of Appeal upstamped the judgment of the Federal High Court. But one thing that is very important here is the judges, in their wisdom, they said that only those who employ a person can suspend the person. And then they went on to say that you cannot withdraw her salary and allowances because by the Constitution, it is the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation, and Financial Commission who decide the pay of legislators.
So you don't have a control over it.
You don't have a control over the pay. So that is Section 111
So
for
not
states.
only don't you have powers about suspension, you also do have powers over our remuneration.
God bless you. If you look at Section 70 of the Constitution, it provides for the remuneration of National Assembly members. And it is not within their own ambit. It is the RMFAC.
That does
right?
that.
So if you look at the totality of these provisions, you see that they don't have the power. But then if you also escalated to general democratic provisions, if you look at Section 77, for example, it is the same section that gives every citizen who is above 18 the suffrage, the right to vote. It says that every constituency in Nigeria must be represented at every given time.
Yes.
You must be represented.
Right.
So if you look at the totality of these provisions, you will see that by the Constitution or by our law, looking at it in a Puritan perspective, because the standing order provides for suspension provisions, right? But that is why Section 60 is very important, because it says that your standing order is subject to the Constitution. So if you look at it like that, you'd see that there is no provision for suspension whatsoever. But there are other decisions like that of Honorable Dino Melai at the time with the Progressives against the House of Representatives, although the issue there was whether the suspension for more than, an indefinite suspension at the time was valid. And JTO, I think the current Chief Judge of the Federal High Court today, he said it clearly that you cannot go against your own standing order. Your own standing order says that you can only suspend for 14 days. And that is the current, provision in even the current standing order that was amended in 2023, that you can only suspend for 14 days, maximally, by the way. It actually begins that, okay, if it is a minor offense, a minor misconduct, you should suspend for the rest of the proceeding of the day. However, if it is major, then you can now, suspend for maximally 14 days. Now, I think she was suspended for for the seat issue, raising Order 10. And it is very, surprising, because if you actually read the Order 10, it says that where a senator actually raises any issue hinging on the privilege
of the senator,
of the senator, every other matter should take. It is there. She read it, but nobody, every other matter should take
second place.
Yes, second place until it is resolved. It is there. So if they are relying on the same order on one hand, then I think it only makes sense for them to rely on the entire order to read it in community. But I don't think that is the case, because if you look at what the head of the Senate Committee on Ethics, Privileges and Public Petitions said about the nullity of her petition because of the signature, which I don't agree with, by the way. If you look at the provisions that follow that, particularly sub 7, it says that where the matter is in court already, you hands off. And he read a letter from MJ Numa SN where, a court order was attached that, this matter was, not that this matter is in court, in fact, that there's a court order, a direct court order that says that you should, wait until, and it says you should come back by 10th of March, by the way. It's not as if, it's indefinite. But then they still went on and flagrantly disobeyed the court order.
By suspending her.
By suspending her. By even continuing with the seat in itself. The thing with court orders is, even if you don't agree with it, even if you think it's illegal, unless you set it aside, you are bound to obey it constitutionally. So if you look at the totality of our laws, frankly, there's been a breach. There's been a breach, and
so the Senate of the Federal Republic have breached their own rules.
They breached their own rules.
And they've breached the Constitution.
They breached the Constitution.
And they have also ignored judicial rulings.
Yes, which is, if you ask in my opinion, which is actually we should be the wider
of course,
focus
if you look at the whole
because
thing.
it just by that stroke of genius, they've undermined the Senate itself, that is the legislative arm of government, and they've undermined the judiciary. Okay,
all right. Let's come to you, Prof. What the lawyer said now establishes the fact that the Senate have been acting in flagrant violation of their own standing rules or standing order, in violation of the Constitution, and in violation of judicial pronouncements on the matter. The question I want to ask you now, Professor Okome, is what kind of signaling is the Nigerian Senate sending to the entire world? What kind of signaling are they sending to Nigerians, to women, especially women who are suffering from sexual harassment?
The signaling is that it is okay to sexually harass, that this is our norm, that this is something that is legitimate to do, and that a survivor of sexual harassment does not have any legitimate ground to complain. They should be quiet. If they are not quiet, they should be silenced. So this shows that the patriarchy in Nigeria is misogynist, that is woman-hating, that it discriminates against women. It also forbids women to have a voice in terms of being able to articulate matters that concern them, complain about injustices that are visited upon them. And I did say too that this is Women's History Month. Actually, from this week, from Sunday, you will have meetings in New York of the Commission on the Status of Women, which is a body that looks at how far countries have gone towards recognizing the rights of women, and also meeting the Beijing platform of action, 30% representation for women. Obviously, with the 4 women in the Senate, Nigeria has failed this test. Obviously, also, with the kind of unjust and unlawful actions that are being taken so blatantly by the Senate, Nigeria seems not to care about its reputation in the Committee of Nations. It seems as if we have people in the Senate, and also I dare say in the National Assembly, because I've seen similar ways in which women are denigrated, women are, otherized, women are treated with disdain in that body. So Nigeria is out of step with other nations. Let's also be clear, SDG 5, the Sustainable Development Goal 5, is about gender equality. And Nigeria is a signatory to the Sustainable Development Goals document. It's also a signatory to the Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women. Nigeria is a signatory to the major international conventions, agreements, and, promises that are made that there would be gender equality. But our Senate somehow doesn't see the need to be in compliance. And I am shocked by the 80% sexual harassment figure. But I dare say too, anecdotally, if you speak to women, you would find that majority of women have been sexually harassed. A lot of them don't speak up because we do not have laws that they are able to draw on. And then we don't have social support for people who make these charges that enable for them to be taken seriously, for investigations to be done and redress made by the aggressors. So I believe that it is still possible to redeem ourselves as a nation, and that our institutions, as I said before, these representatives, these senators, they need to go and study and then observe the world and where the world is moving and realize that they're out of step. If these men do not stop doing this, I urge Nigerian women of good conscience to come out and protest against them, and also insist on fair representation in that body. Because actually what I would like in the Senate and in the National Assembly, the state assemblies, the local government bodies is I want parity. I want 50-50. And I want the kind of women that would stand up to to this patriarchy on steroids that we see being manifested in the Senate.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much. Mr. Wali, your last word, just quickly, in a minute.
All right, I have to correct myself. I said that it was the Chief Judge who conducted the Dino proceeding. It was actually Justice Bello. He did the Abdulmumin Jibrin one.
The Federal High Court.
The Federal High Court. He did the Abdulmumin Jibrin one. Okay. But he actually said it that, the National Assembly, or rather the legislature generally, should understand that they cannot operate with absolute immunity, that they should actually embody, the democratic and constitutional principles, and they should espouse them, and they should put it forth. So he actually admonished them, a very brilliant admonishment at the time. But I have to say that there's a document that I saw online that it has featured very thinly, Code of Ethics of the Nigerian Senate, or rather of the National Assembly. If you read the document, you probably end up in tears, because you'd see that what is provided there and what we have seen so far, are two worlds apart. Really, if you look at the procedure
and
there...
That is a document of the National Assembly itself.
Yes, it is the document of the National Assembly itself. Right, but if you look at the procedure there, you'd find out every legislator who feels like the code has been broken can put forth a petition. That is why I do not disagree. I do not agree with that signature preliminary objection.
That Natasha cannot sign.
Yes, and by the way, if you look at the entire regime of the public petitions section of their rules, you find that it specifically mentions public petitions. The committee is ethics, privileges, and public petitions. It specifically mentions public petitions coming from the public, which a senator should promote, but it is very different from a petition that is based on ethical grounds between one senator and another, or between one representative and another. And finally, for the sake of rule of law and fair hearing, the Senate President ought to have recused himself. Now, a lot of arguments are that the suspension was because of the seating arrangement and not the sexual harassment that prevents her from carrying out her legislative duty. It is very important to complete. If you read a petition, it is very important to complete it. Don't just stay on sexual harassment, because it's just very easy to defend. Sexual harassment, preventing her from conducting the affairs of
doing her job, she was elected.
Her job. But by the principles of fair hearing, which is rooted in the principles of natural justice, justice must not only be done, it must be seen to be done by an ordinary man, and by the ordinary reasonable. So it doesn't matter whether. What do you think?
Exactly, and that's
what do you think, Prof?
Exactly.
That is it.
That is what justice is.
Is there bias? Was it impartial? So he ought to have recused himself, if indeed he was, bound into rule of law and justice. But that's not the case.
Thank you so much, Professor Olufunke Okome and Mr. Ibrahim Wali. Thank you for coming to Inside Sources. Thank you for your contribution. I would have wished that, this is not what we are talking about in the Nigerian Senate. I would have wished that the fight in the Nigerian Senate would be something that has to do with the welfare of the Nigerian people, something that will have to do with public interest. But here we are, discussing about it. Nonetheless, very important point, and we hope that those who have ears, they are listening. And like Prof said, we can still redeem the situation. Thank you so much. Inside Sources, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Inside Sources. Now we want to have a quick discussion on issues around the economy, especially about food prices and some other developments that we have seen in the economy. To join me in that conversation today, I have a former presidential advisor on agriculture in the Buhari Osinbajo administration, returning back to Inside Sources, Mr. Dolapo Bright. You're welcome back to Inside Sources.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And to also join us in that important conversation, we have Mr. Mojeed Dahiru, notable TV analyst and newspaper columnist. Mr. Dahiru, welcome back to Inside Sources.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here.
All right. So let's start with Mr. Bright. And, I wanted to have your assessment of, quite a bit of excitement that we have around the drop in food prices. So how do we interpret that in your own view? What's going on?
Yeah. The food, we have a drop in food prices, yes. But we always have drop in food prices in February anyway. But you see, this year is different in the sense that the grains generally, the price is supposed to be going up towards the end of February and March, but it's not. You see, the reason why we have a drop in grains, the price of grains, not that the price, I mean, let me first of all put it this way. Price of grains last year, February, was around 20-something, between 28 and 32, because I sold my maize between 28 and 32 last year, February. So when we look at the same period, February 2025,
Right.
we are selling grains between 45 and 50. I mean, it's high. But the reason why people are saying the price of maize is low, is going down, is because of the fact that the price of maize that we bought for between 28 to 35 at that time came to 120.
Okay.
120,000. Just like onions. By December, onions was reaching 200 and something, 300 and something thousand. Now onions is down. The reason why onions is down at this time is because of the fact that the dry season harvest is out. And there's a lot of people doing dry season harvest. I mean, dry season onions production. In Kano, in Sokoto, in Kebbi. All of them, they are bringing out the onions. So definitely, price of onions will come down. Definitely, price of tomato will come down. Definitely, price of pepper will come down. But last week, Atarudu, that is a bonus scotch, that is Abanaro, is going up again. Because I always monitor all these prices.
Why is that?
It is going up because of we always forget about demand and supply. We are having problems with grains now in terms of price because of the fact that the government imported grains from outside the country at zero duty, which is, to me, is a disgrace. You know, it's going to affect the farmers. So many farmers are not happy about what is happening. Let me explain. How much does it cost a farmer to produce an hectare of maize? He will spend around 900,000. When I produced my maize 2023, rainy season,
right,
it cost me around 300 and something. Now it's 900 and something.
300 something
thousand. Yes.
To produce
one hectare.
What space?
One hectare. All right. If you now put the handling, post-harvest handling, and all those things, drying and everything, and a farmer is now selling at 40,000, he's not making profit. Let's look at it this way. Let's do some maths. Okay. Nigeria gets around, we are struggling to get two tons of maize, of 2 tons per hectare in our maize production. All right, let's assume that we have 2 tons.
Compared to?
Yes, 2 tons will give us 20 bags.
Okay.
All right, and you are selling the bags at 40,000. That's 800,000.
Right.
Has it covered your cost of production? It has not. And you see, the government is not looking at this. We are celebrating importation of grains from other countries, and these countries are countries that support their farmers. Thailand supports rice farmers by $1.6 billion every time they support them.
In subsidies? In
subsidy. Europe supports farmers generally 34 billion annually, even more than United States. United States is 24.
Do you have this? Do you have our own figures in Nigeria that you can compare with?
We are not supporting. What are we supporting? We are not supporting anything. Even our support is making the farmers, is destroying the farmers more than what it should be. Let me give you.
You mean what is supposed to be a support?
What is supposed to be a support? Last year, the president said we are going to give fertilizer to farmers. When was that? In July. We started planting March. People have started planting March. They are planting now. They are going to continue to plant till June. And the government wants to give them fertilizer in July. And the fertilizer came when? In September.
Too late.
The senators started distributing fertilizer. These people started distributing fertilizer. Even in Ekiti, they were distributing in November. It's too late.
Okay, all right. Too late. I do understand.
So please, we must not jubilate. The price of, is still going to go up. is going to go up in the sense that unless the president will continue to import food, the demand for food in Nigeria, the population, we are 200 and something million. The demand for food is high. We've got to produce every time, not once in a year. And the government must support the farmers because the support of farmers is critical to our food security.
Okay, all right. So we are going to come back to you. Let me take it to Mr. Majid. And I want Mr. Majid to take a broad perspective. Are the people feeling the impact of this? Drop in food prices generally, and then what's your own take?
Nobody's feeling the impact, and it cannot be felt because there was a sharp rise in the price of food commodities between May 29, 2023, and of course February this year, way above the affordability threshold of majority of the people of Nigeria, majority. And even the implementation of the 70,000 minimum wage has not helped to actually mitigate that problem of unaffordable food items for the majority of our people, because there are some defective interventions in the government. What the government seeks to do by way of economic reforms have ended up probably deforming our economy and has jeopardized food security in the process. Now, before now, what has government didn't have any concise policy on food security. It was mostly haphazard, just playing to the gallery, if you ask me, and not something that was a serious policy of state to guarantee availability, affordability, and accessibility of food, which is food security, to citizens. But this has been made worse now by the fact that available food items in the market are simply unaffordable. Families are struggling because they can't simply pay for it. They're not earning enough to feed well. So this is a very fundamental problem. I've always argued that Nigeria is not suffering from cost of living crisis. That should be very charitable. What Nigeria suffers from is cost of existence crisis.
Wow.
Because in the UK, for instance, where this phrase was made popular, they described their own plight as cost of living, right? But nobody in the UK ever complained of the high cost of food items. It's something you don't have in the UK. In the UK, well, accommodation might be expensive, some other things might be unaffordable, energy might be expensive.
But no food.
But food is not an existential problem in the UK. And like this party already pointed out, that is because in most civilized climes, food production along the entire value chain is heavily subsidized for the purpose of food security. Let me tell you something today. Nigeria is about the only country that I can think of in the Committee of Nations where the price of food items, food produce, agri-produce, are actually determined by market forces.
Only.
Only. I heard him talk about demand and supply. You see, farmers are left on their own to struggle through the difficult terrain of producing food in Nigeria. And so they bring it to the market and they add their cost of production, their cost of recovery of investment, and all of that cost on it. And the citizens that are barely surviving on less than $40 per month as minimum wage have to now pay through their nose for these things. In other countries, food prices are not reflective, are not market reflective, because it is controlled through very, substantial intervention, subsidies, and some level of price control. It's absolutely lacking in Nigeria, because the government of Nigeria apparently does not care about how their citizens survive in terms of feeding, basic feeding. It's as simple as that.
Very, very interesting way to open the conversation, and I want us to dimension it in quite a few ways. And I'm going to come back to you, Mr. Bright, now to say that, all right, so you made a point that government is not helping. You also made a point that, look, those prices are basically, the falling prices, as it were, is quite cosmetic, even though you don't use that word. That's not something that is sustainable.
Yeah.
What would you have government do? What kind of support ought to come from government to the farmers?
Thank you for that question. Although, I mean, it's supposed to be long, but I'll cut it short. Fundamentally, our farmers, the smallholder farmers are the people supplying 80% of what we eat. And the government is not doing anything from federal, state, and local. They're not doing what they are supposed to do. You see, and it's because of the fact that the federal government, not this federal government, from the beginning.
Cumulatively.
Yeah, they dominated the sector. You dominate a sector that you cannot fund. That's the problem.
So how do the federal government dominate the agri sector?
I mean, they are dominating the agri sector in the sense that they are forming the ADP. They are forming, they want to supply fertilizer. They want to bring tractor. They want to do this, they want to do that. No. What you are supposed to do, your duty is governance. Let's look at governance. All right, look at how we can increase knowledge in agriculture. That's the work of federal government, knowledge. How can we coordinate the players in the agricultural sector, the private sector, the farmers, the government, and all of them? That's what governance is about. Then the government can now come up with policies in terms of what are the strategies, or what can we do to help. The strategy will come with governance, but the policy will now say what can we do to now do what he is saying, support farmers to give us food security. Let's take the tractor, for example. You are bringing tractors.
Yeah, the president said about 2,000.
Yeah, you are bringing 2,000 plus. Even bring 10,000 tractors. You brought only 200 and something now, less than 300. Even we bring the 10,000 now. Without all the attachment, let me tell you something. Mechanization of agriculture is not about tractor alone. Tractor, what we are doing now is tractorization. That's what we call tractorization. The tractor has attachments that will work. All right, you have tractors that will do your land preparation. What happens to the weeding? Will the tractor do it for you? But the tractor can do it for you if we plant properly. The tractor can do the weeding, can do the harvesting, can do even the drilling of the seed.
Why do you think the tractors will not do it?
Because we don't put into consideration all those things. We don't look at mechanization as a whole. We look at tractor in terms of procurement. You are going to procure tractor.
So if you are going to look at it as a whole, what does that mean? Does it mean that we have to import the particular type of tractors? Or?
Yeah, we need different things to support these farmers. But you see, why must government import and give farmers? How do you determine the farmers that you are going to give?
The tractors.
And the tractors and so on and so forth. The tractors that you are bringing from Belarus, do they have parts? You see, the problem with us, I've traveled around this country, several times, meeting farmers and so on and so forth. You go to different states, you see different tractors from different places. I was at Plateau State, ASTC, they have beautiful program managed by the Israeli before, and that government came and just put it aside. But the tractor, very good tractor from Italy, they didn't have parts.
The tractors didn't have parts to maintain them.
To maintain them, so they will remove one part to the other.
All right. Okay. All right. So
that's part of the reason why the tractor will not work.
And the fertilizers too will not work.
No, the fertilizer. Let me tell you something. Before you can give fertilizer, what is the nutrient that you want to replace? We are replacing nutrients on the soil, and you give fertilizer, you give urea. We are going to. Let me tell you something. In the north, the governors should know that they are just destroying the land the more, in the sense that if you are putting the wrong nutrient on the soil, because of you want to procure fertilizer and give them at the wrong time, give them in September and so on and so forth.
Why are we assuming that they are giving the wrong nutrient?
They are giving the wrong nutrient because different. All right. For example, I've planted yam. I've planted because I wanted to follow the farmers to know how they feel. I've planted so many things. Yam, planted maize, rice, sesame seed, potato, sweet potato, and so on and so forth. They have different.
Okay, all right. Nutrients. Let's take it to Mr. Mojid, and I want you to respond to that, but also talk about what about the state governments? I think
the major responsibility for agricultural production should lie with the states for a number of reasons. Number one, the control of land, which is a major capital injection for agricultural production, is under the control of states.
Yeah.
But there's something about land management system in Nigeria that we need to really have a conversation about. Apart from the FCT and a few other states here and there, the majority of the 36 states of Nigeria, or the government of the 36 states of the Federation, have not substantially acquired land in line with the Land Use Act. I keep making this point. It's when you acquire land, pay the necessary compensations.
Yeah.
You must now plan your agricultural economics around land utilization in a differentiated manner that will plug into the knowledge base agriculture is talking about. That is, you must know how to plant where, when, and how. Not to achieve maximum yield per hectare. In Nigeria today, we have left farming in the hands of rural farmers that are still operating at, Stone Age technology. Farming of hoe and cutlass, living in mud houses in farmstead, without electricity, without water, without any infrastructure at all to support life.
That about 80% of our farmers are in that category.
Well, 80 that's the reality. And when you talk about procurement of tractors and fertilizers, I'll tell you the truth. Most of those tractors, if any at all, do not get to those real farmers.
Where do they end up?
They end up as, see, let me tell you, what government does is this. They know that agriculture is an important thing. They know that people want to be seen doing about food security.
Right.
So they procure fertilizers for the upstream. There's this elaborate commissioning event for tractors. There's this elaborate show of concern during distribution of fertilizers. I think they do that mostly for the optics, not because it's going to really impact positively in food production. So they've done that, so they record a part of the achievement. I will provide 100 tractors to cultivate over maybe 10,000 hectares of land, which is grossly inadequate. So they just do that for the optics, really. And it ends there. If you go to the farm state, if you go across this country, if you go to Agatu, if you go to Owo, if you go to Rebecca, go to all the farming communities in Nigeria, you will not see any of this input in these places. And so we need a realization. I don't know, I keep saying this thing, it's a decision that government needs to reach. So look, we need to provide food security. There's nothing, we can do the analysis and bring out all the data. Until somebody takes that decision, to say, look, we need to provide food. I want to provide support for production. It will not happen. And as it stands today, most state governments are simply treating agricultural production with levity because a situation where every end of the month, a governor from Zamfara to Kebbi and from Kebbi to Cross River do not need to lift a finger. He or she does not need to till a square foot or a square kilometer of land to get hundreds of billions of naira in oil money allocation every month. So why do I need to sort out my...
So no incentive.
There's no basis to work. Whereas Nigeria should have used this advantage of monthly allocation. And with the blessing of a very fertile land. When they say Nigerian land is fertile, it is not. It's not
that fertile.
No, what we're saying is, at least it is more fertile than Singapore, more fertile than in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, we have
more fertile than Saudi Arabia. For my house, in my house, for example, I have 2 residences, and I'll tell you what has happened in each of those residences. I ate pawpaw and threw away into the trash bin. Just, as I would have done, as everybody would do. And what did I discover? In between where the tarred road in my estate, you have the trash bin is actually where it is put. Between the intersection between the interlocking tiles, the tarred road, and what do you call it, paving stone, all concrete. Apparently, a piece of the seed dropped inside
the tarred.
Do you know it germinated and started sprouting pawpaw at a very short height without being tended to? In my other house, my borehole, sometimes I put it on, so the water overflows. And before I could put it off, it will take some time. Sometimes you just forget about the fire that you put on your borehole and all that. After a while, a tree started growing from beneath the interlock and was going to push the tank over. I didn't have to cultivate it. I have a banana plantation behind my house that I don't water, I don't cultivate it, and it sprouts every now and then.
Wow.
Yes.
Interesting.
I'm just saying that we have this advantage in some parts of Nigeria. I've been to Cross River. I've been to Budukatu Ranch. Boy, you needed to see what the wonder of nature there.
So we need...
Some countries don't have this natural advantage that can be enhanced and properly utilized. And I'm saying, at least we have capital as state governments every month.
Right.
Why not? It means it's just a little what you need to convert this already fertile land into more fertility for production.
Right.
Unlike some other countries that need to use very high level of technology.
Yeah, the point is well made. Thank you.
Singapore, for example, has to use hydroponics to grow basic food. We don't do that in Nigeria.
So what we need to get together is to get our hearts together.
Yes.
Especially the states.
They need to get serious.
Yeah.
The federal government can now support through policy.
Okay.
First, for food security, if there's excess, you cannot export.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me say something about that.
Yeah, please.
Most of the time you are from the south.
No, I'm from Kogi State. I'm the north.
Yeah, I mean, probably.
Well,
No. When you travel around the country, you discover that one of the challenges, and like I always say, is because of the fact that the federal government is doing everything. One of our challenges is this. I mean, the South is not doing, to me, they are doing nothing when it comes to agriculture. They are doing zero.
Shouldn't we hold the governors responsible?
I mean, of course. That's where I'm going. I mean, so most of the time people talk about throwing something on the floor and it will grow. No, I mean, it will grow, but what about the yield that we're talking about? You see, ordinary seed, we have a problem. We all are heirloom seed. That is our seed of olden days seed. We can't plant it again. Most of the seed that we use now for all those things that you grains and all those things, they are hybrid seeds that are sort of manufactured, not like GMO, but hybrid seed.
Right.
So what I'm saying is this: some state governors, not that they are trying in their state, the farmers are always doing what they are supposed to do. They just want a little help from the government. They just want a little help from the government. They are doing what they are supposed to do. So, but you see, the help they want is the knowledge.
Okay.
That's my conclusion when it comes to, because when you go to Jigawa State, you see rice. You go to Kebbi, you see rice. You go to Sokoto, you see onions. You go to all those places. But you see, their production is still below par.
All right. Okay, Mr. Bright, because of our time, we have to go. Thank you so much, for the insight. I think it's clear, from what both of you are saying, that government has to find a more strategic way to intervene and to be able to determine exactly what it is that our farmers need, And the conversation continues. We certainly cannot continue it. We cannot finish it in one day. Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. Mojid Dairu, and thank you so much, Mr. Dolapo Bright, for coming to Inside Sources. We need to do more in the area of agriculture. I said in my language that if food is removed from misery, poverty is gone. We continue to say it. Inside Sources, we continue to insist that we can do it better. That's why we say that Nigeria will prevail. It means Nigeria will win. Thank you for watching another edition of Inside Sources. My name is Laura Konde. I'll see you next week.